Hello and welcome. It's Frances here again, and thank you for coming back to my channel. If this is your first visit, I bid thee welcome. And this is part 2 of our exploration and journey into the shadow work, into the shadow self, from a more probably pagan, craft, earth-centric perception. If this whole area is new to you, you haven't done any shadow work before, you're unfamiliar with the terms, I would recommend that you watch my first video where I sort of said a little bit of an introduction as to where the term actually came from, its meaning in psychology, my own background and interest, and what it can mean when we're working within this area. Yeah. And if you have watched that video, if you are familiar with shadow work, we will continue. I'm going to start this video with a reading from my book, Encountering the Dark Goddess, A Journey into the Shadow Realms. I do have a section about the Dark Goddess and shadow self, and it opens with a quote from Jung. It is a frightening thought that man also has a shadow side to him, consisting not just of little weaknesses and foibles, but of a positively dynamism. The individual seldom knows anything of this. To him, as an individual, it is incredible that he should ever, in any circumstances, go beyond himself. But let these harmless creatures form a mass, and there emerges a raging monster. Jung also describes the shadow as a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. To become conscious of it involves recognizing the dark aspects of the personality as present and real. This act is the essential condition for any kind of self-knowledge, and it therefore, as a rule, meets with considerable resistance. The shadow can be beliefs and perceptions that we grow up with, and that are no longer part of us today, yet they are still forming part of our subconscious, and therefore they have an influence over how we perceive and interpret things. In NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, this is often referred to as limiting beliefs, things that limit us from reaching our fullest potential. When we address them, we bring them out of the dark recesses of our subconscious so that we can become consciously aware of them. Jung also stated that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. If we cannot accept or fear these aspects of ourselves, we often find that we project them onto other people, and we see them in other people, and this is called projection. German-born poet, novelist, painter Hermann Hesse stated, "If you hate a person, you hate something in them that is part of yourself. What isn't a part of us doesn't disturb us." And that's quite interesting when you think about it. If you hate a person, you hate something in them that is part of you. If you dislike something in a person, if you dislike a person, there's something in that person that is resonating with you, reflecting back into you on a deeper level. It's far easier to project things onto other people than it is for us to deal with these issues within ourselves. And as human beings, we naturally take the road of least resistance. We're always looking for the easiest, quickest way out. And when it comes to shadow work, there is no such thing. At the end of the day, the only person we are shortchanging is ourselves. And that sort of defeats the whole purpose of doing shadow work in the first place. Common shadow behaviours that we may see in others, that we may do ourselves, include making harsh judgments of other people, pointing out their flaws or their insecurities, having extremely quick emotional reactions to scenes and situations and opinions, playing the victim for most or all of the time, pretending to have no biases, no prejudices, or we can even admit to have our biases and prejudices, but then we tend to justify them, make them seem appropriate as to why we should have them. And then there is the Messiah complex. Someone who knows or states that they know everything, yet in reality they don't. So it's quite interesting how many of these we may actually be doing ourselves. My notes on what I've been reading from have gone from something that's typed up to handwritten scribble. So this is going to be interesting to continue on this discussion, because I had thought I had typed up more on that. Anyway, we'll continue. Shadow work is work that is probably orientated towards people who truly want to know aspects of themselves, want to know why we do things, why situations and instances occur to us. There is a concept out there that once we do shadow work, it magically disappears. All our bad habits and phobias and fears and perceptions, but it doesn't. What shadow work is truly about is simply acknowledging the fact that we're human, that we have these imperfections, and that makes us human, and it's okay to have these imperfections. If we know that we fly into fits of rage, that we can be angry at people and circumstances, that's okay. We then work on understanding what triggers us, what sets us off onto these fits of rage. Why do we feel this way about people, situations, circumstances? And we start chipping away as to what sets us off. And once we can find what in NLP they classify as the root cause, the underlying aspect, we can then identify it, maybe remove such triggers from our life or lessen them, or learn to channel that energy into something else. If it's a form of self-expression, then channel it into something, maybe art, sculpture, painting, go for a run, take up boxing. Some people don't like that because it's a form of transference, but it can help us understand what makes us tick. And as I mentioned earlier in the previous video, shadow work is understanding that the more we ignore these humanistic emotions, even if they are a little bit heightened, should we say, volume turned up too much, they are still part of us. And it's through ignoring that we actually feel these emotions or have these emotions push them to the corner where they become a ticking time bomb, so to speak. They come from, as I mentioned in the earlier video, the understanding of the self, when we start beginning to identify who we are. Humans by nature are social creatures, even us introverts, and from a very early age we learn that to get the attention and the love from our parents, acknowledgement from our peers, from our teachers, from society, we should be acting in a certain way, saying certain things, being a certain person. And whether these confinements are part of our natural aspect of who we are or not, we tend to start attempting to fit in. And it's these things that we may do or are interested in that form outside what's considered as the norm, that soon highlight our difference. In some circumstances, this difference is encouraged, but that often comes later. In our early years, if we are different, especially at school, we may find ourselves being picked on because we stand out. And forming these social networks, especially at a younger age for a child, is very important. So if we have unusual interests or perceptions on things, we may be taught to cast them aside, to reject them, to suppress them in order to fit in. Also, if we are from a family where talking about our emotions, our feelings, is discouraged, where our parents may be annoyed, or we may perceive them from being annoyed with us if we do, then we will start to suppress them. We're told that crying is a form of weakness. Big boys don't cry. Don't be a girl's blowers. Pull up your socks. Take it on the chin. Step out the lip. These are all beginning seeds that can form into the shadow or shadow aspects of ourselves. In that we learn not to truly accept aspects of ourselves, especially our emotional outlays. And as human beings, we are emotional bodies. And you find that concept in a lot of spiritual teachings that say we are a spirit having a physical experience, and that we are here to feel. Our spirit is here to feel. We're also made up of energy. We're energetic beings. So our energy, what makes us who we are, the patterns that it's formed to make us, all plays a part in how our shadow self sort of is formed, is identified. The goal for working with the shadow is learning how to integrate and accept and come to know these aspects of ourselves that we may tend to hide from, to ignore. To make that which is operating on a conscious level, conscious. And some people might not even be aware that some of these aspects actually exist within themselves. And often in those situations, these aspects are projected onto others. We see them onto others, as I mentioned in the previous video of Herman Hesse. What we dislike or what we hate in other people are actually aspects within ourselves that we haven't identified with yet. I suppose from a pagan craft perception, we are ultimately trying to improve our own being, our own self-worth, our own essence. And this is why shadow work is appealing. It is hard work. And it does involve being honest with ourselves. And as I mentioned in an earlier video, if we're not honest with ourselves, the only person that we're really cheating is us. No one else cares. But understanding your shadow, understanding what makes you tick, is actually extremely important to be a fully integrated human being. Jung also stated that, how can I be substantial if I do not cast a shadow? I must have a dark side also if I am to be whole. When you do identify with your shadow, begin to join these two aspects of yourself. You begin the healing process that majority of us are seeking, even on a solar or a deeper level. That coming home, that being a fully integrated, authentic person, as opposed to just being superficial or part, not fully identifying. In the next video, just going through some notes here, I want to sort of give you some examples or exercises or techniques of how we can start working with the shadow. Probably in a, I'll say, safe environment. As I mentioned in the first video, if you do find or you do suffer from mental health issues, I would recommend that you consult with your medical practitioner first. Let them know what you're doing. It might seem a little bit heavy-handed at this stage, but should there be some form of trauma or aspect, situation like that you have pushed into your subconscious, your mental health is extremely important. And this work encourages us to accept us for who we are, finding perfection within the imperfect, because that's what being human is all about. And I'd like to finish with another reading from my book. And here I quote a psychotherapist, David Rico, who described the shadow as that part of us which is incompatible with who we think we are or supposed to be. It is the realm beyond our limits, the place where we are more than we seem. The shadow is ironically humorous because the opposite of our self-image proves to be true in spite of all our tricky attempts not to believe or display it. Fear of that wider self keeps it in the dungeon, but there are ways to release the prisoner. And that's from my book, Encountering the Dark Goddess, A Journey to the Shadow Realms. So I hope that I will see you in the next video, and we'll continue our exploration into shadow work. Until then, take care. Blessings.